Welcome everyone to Mailfuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about the Twilight Zone Season 5 Episode 17. It's called Number 12 Looks Just Like You. So spoilers for the episode. This is a super appealing episode to me in many ways because the type of world that it builds is this sort of dystopian, cyberpunk. We never really see like outside. I'm not saying we see cities or anything like that. It's all just about this young woman who's 18 and in this future world set in the year 2000, which I always love watching old stuff and they're like in the future, but it's like a year that we're already past. But in 19 in this society, you go through a process, a transformation where you basically pick a face and a body out of a catalogue and you're transformed into that person. And so in this case, number 12, tons of people pick a number 12. So there's tons of this identical looking woman walking around. Same with men. There's maybe a handful to choose from either gender, and that's it. And everyone kind of looks the same. And I got excited when we heard about this one last time because immediately I could see, oh, this is going to talk about obviously the idea of beauty, the idea of plastic surgery and sort of standards and all those things. But I think even beyond that, like under that surface, you've also got this idea of conforming, this idea that you have to be like everyone else, literally in the physical sense, but it's more about in the same way that like zombie movies are often about how you have to become one of the mass of people and not be an individual, not to stand out. So as the episode kept going and it became clear that this is a full-on dystopia that we're in, when because they mention casually in the back half that some books are banned, and I'm like, oh, I'm not shocked. It's the most predictable thing in the world, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but the most predictable thing in the world, that the society that has this process that is trying to pressure every single person to go through it doesn't allow the reading of certain material, goes hand in hand. It made complete sense to me. So I quite enjoyed watching this one, and I think the world that it builds and the sort of the rules of this world that it unravels as this young character, or main character Marilyn, tries to resist and doesn't want this process, and the way everyone reacts to her decision and thinks she's crazy and thinks she's got extremist radical views. One person straight up says that these are radical ideas she has. The picture it paints of the world that this operates in, I think, is very, very vivid. I think it nails that part of it completely. The only real thing holding this episode back is that it very much is just revealing what the world is and doesn't necessarily have like a build to a conclusion where there's a subversion by the end, right? Typically a story, a character realizes something by the end and makes a decision, or something's kind of revealed. And maybe it fits into the themes of this story, but ultimately it just builds to her being forced to go through with it, and then she's just like everyone else. So it's got a very downer ending. She doesn't manage to escape or keep her individuality like she wanted to. So the ending fits with what the episode is doing, but it does kind of feel like there's so much to pack in terms of unraveling the world and exploring the ideas, that it is really just a picture of the ideas, and it is just, let's talk about these themes and these ideas without there being as much of an actual sort of story with a climax, and if that makes sense. So, but that's the only real critique, and it's not a big critique in this case, because at 25 minutes, it's maybe okay not to have that, but it would have been the thing that puts it over the edge, I think. If I felt like I got like a build and a great conclusion, where I actually felt like she was trying to get away, and maybe you still have the downer ending, you can still have like her ultimately be grabbed and forced into this, but it never really felt like there was that much of a story of her trying to escape. She does kind of walk around a little bit before she's kind of grabbed and put into the thing, but there's not much to it. Most of the episode are all the conversations that kind of reveal what this world is and what the rules are and how these people think. And they're all fascinating conversations. It almost feels like the first 25 minutes, barring like the very ending, it almost feels like the first 25 minutes of a movie that could then go in and really explore this. It was hard not to think of, classic stuff like Fahrenheit 451, or even more modern schlocky stuff like Equilibrium, particularly because it's heavily implied in this that they are suppressing everyone's emotions when they do this transfer. Like when they transform them into like their supermodel-esque pics, it feels like they're also manipulating their ideas and like the way they think. And a couple of times in the episode when she's saying she doesn't want this, they basically act like she's hysterical and says, "You just needed some happy drink." Like it was a title like that. It was like a smile right now drink, or a happy now drink, they were calling it. And she gets frustrated because she doesn't want to smile, and it's this idea that you have to conform all the time to please everyone else. Because there's a lot of talk in this episode of like, yeah, you're not ugly, but you're not like super pretty either, and everyone will like you more if you're super pretty. The justification at one point from one of the doctors is that when this all changed and they started doing this, it was in part to eradicate inequality, and that everyone would be the same and everyone would be treated equally. But of course, the idea of individuality, of not having your own personality, of not being yourself, if everyone's the same, then no one is special, no one is unique, no one has qualities that are just for them. And that idea of trying to keep individuality in a dystopian system that is trying to eradicate it is, I love those themes. I love playing with those ideas. And it kind of just pokes at it at first, and it kind of like peels back as the episode goes on. She doesn't seem like she's super excited about picking a body, effectively, at the start of the episode. And the mother is just like, "Oh, don't be silly. This is the best thing that's ever happened to you. You'll be beautiful. You'll be this, you'll be that." Like, no one accepts that she's saying things that make sense. Although I did like there's a special effect here where they've got a big screen with some of the choices. And honestly, it looks like she's only got choices between 8 and 12. And I don't know if there's more and they're only on one page, or if it is literally just 8 and 12, because we never see any other kind. Because we see multiple people walking around with these same faces throughout the episode. They've got the same actors playing multiple roles and they've all got name tags because, well, they need name tags. How could you tell Stephanie from Jessica when they've got the exact same body and face if they don't have name tags, right? That's one of the downsides of this society, which they've just solved by having everyone always wear a name tag. But anyway, the special effect of this screen up it was amusing me because it was clear that it was superimposed on, because it was kind of shaking a little bit. So it's not a big deal or anything, but I smelled a little bit because I could see how they were doing the effect. But yeah, like we see her be talked to her uncle, who looks exactly like her father, who looks exactly like all the doctors. We see her talk to her best friend, who's a number 8. Her mum's a number 12. And I think she eventually is forced to be a number 8, so she looks just like her best friend at the end of the episode. Yeah, all of these conversations, it was really sticking out to me, like just how it was slowly hinting at the larger world without just explaining it. One of my favorite moments of the whole episode is when she's talking to her uncle, and he's like, "Oh, what's these silly ideas I'm hearing about you not wanting to do this?" And she's like, "Well, like my father didn't really want to do it, and he felt kind of forced into it. And, like maybe I want to remain an individual. Maybe I want to look like me because it'll be me, and people can care about like who I am rather than just me fitting what everyone else's idea of beauty is." And he straight up says, "Oh, where are you getting these radical ideas from?" That line stuck out to me so much because it was like, okay, that was the first time where I kind of went, we're not just doing this and nothing else. This is implying that this entire world that we're in is a lot more controlling, and this is all about becoming one of the masses rather than the individual. And that just kept becoming a bigger thing throughout the episode. But by the time, like I said, where we get to where they're just openly talking about having banned Shakespeare and other books and these ideas that we're not supposed to have. The big reveal as the episode goes on, because she keeps bringing up that her father, who's dead, kind of inspired some of these ideas, and it's hinted that he didn't really want this process, but the wife talked him into it, is that ultimately we find out that he committed suicide. He didn't die in some war. They mentioned like a fight on Ganymede, like one of the moons of Saturn. I'm trying to remember from The Expanse. It was either a moon or it was like a big enough like asteroid or whatever that you could. Anyway, regardless, he didn't die in some war. He committed suicide because they took away his individuality and he couldn't live with that anymore. And that's kind of your big kind of dramatic beat towards the end, to the point where they don't let her go because she's got these ideas of being an individual, so they won't let her. And they keep telling her that she does have a choice, but she gets really stern about it and says, no, I'm not doing it. And then all of a sudden she's been kept overnight and she's not allowed to leave. She's been given a sedative. She's not allowed to do any of this. And she tries to ask her best friend for help. She's like, Val, please help me. I'm asking for your help. And Val just keeps saying, I don't understand why you're thinking like this. You're going to be beautiful. It's great. And you'll live longer now. This is fantastic. Why do you care about your dead dad? You've had like 9 stepdads since then. Because one of the details they bring up is that this also makes everyone live longer. Everyone lives about twice as long as they would have otherwise. So people are living to like almost 200. And she's like, yeah, but you could probably do that without the transformation, right? Because I wouldn't mind living longer, but like I don't need to change necessarily. And everyone at every turn just sort of smiles and says, oh, you're being silly. This is nonsense. You have to be like just everyone else. So it's very obviously on the surface, the obvious thing it's talking about is the idea of conforming to these beauty standards, and that there's very particular things that are attractive and everything else is false, and you can't be attracted to anything else. And it's all about pleasing the other people around you rather than yourself. That's obviously the surface level stuff here, and it works really well. It makes that literal by having every single character look the same, or all the women look either A or B, right? There's 2 choices. One's got longer hair, one's got more of a shorter haircut, but that's basically it, right? And obviously, and this may just because of when it was made, but also I can't help but notice that every single person is white in this show as well, in this episode. So, and that might not have changed anyway. It kind of works in this case for the story of the idea of the people in charge wanting everyone to look the same. Like, they never get into it, but I do beg the question, are they making people of other races change to look like what's accepted by the establishment? That's a big question, and I think it's something that you can sort of speculate on, and because they build up the ideas of the world so well throughout these conversations, you can start asking and thinking about those questions, and the answer's probably yes. Like, it probably is the case. And are they making a choice to do this, or are they being forced to do it? I suspect that, they're being forced. They don't like that someone is even questioning them at all. So, yeah, I think all of that is really good. But then, obviously, you go wider with it, and it's actually just the tip of the iceberg, because it's more about controlling everyone. It's about keeping everyone happy and being the same. The idea of this drink that makes you happy, the idea that they're removing the negative emotions. Again, this is like other dystopian stories where if we remove anyone's feelings that will make them rebel, then we'll never be challenged. The establishment will never be questioned, and everything's fine. At one point, someone asked Val, or actually, no, it's at the end of the episode. It's when Marilyn comes out and she's changed into a number 8, and they say, "How are you feeling?" She's like, "Oh, well, I'm feeling fantastic. I've never felt better. Why wouldn't I feel amazing? The world's fantastic. I'm pretty. There's nothing to absolutely be upset about. It's about keeping all the sheep happy, and they'll never question any decisions that are being made." And I think that unraveling throughout the episode, and it helps that it appeals to me for sure, but it works really well because it works on those multiple levels. You can sort of read from it what layer you want to think about the most, what layer appeals to you the most. If you want to look at it purely as talking about beauty standards and everyone getting plastic surgery these days to look the same, Rod even says in his intro that, hey, this might not be exactly like tomorrow, but it doesn't feel like it's that implausible. I think one of the lines he says is, let's hesitate before we call it impossible. I think that's something he says towards the end when he comes back in. And I'm like, yeah, honestly, with the amount of plastic surgery some people get now, and there's a lot of people who are trying to look very similar with various cosmetic surgeries and things now. This doesn't seem that silly from a, it's not as identical as it appears here, but it's inching ever closer to it, to the point where people go through this without choice. So I think that you can take that from it if you want, and if you want to think deeper about how they're using this to, you know, whoever the establishment are, and we never get a hint of that. We never get a hint of who's in charge necessarily. Obviously, the head doctor that she goes to see that tells her that, you know, this radical filth or these hysterical readings that she's read that she's not supposed to have read because they've been illegal for years. Like, it definitely implies that he's high up the chain, and maybe it does say, yeah, this is like a patriarchal thing. Like, this is men keeping everyone in line. It's just like, instead of the Handmaid's Tale where everyone's becoming a servant, it's like everyone's sort of tricked into thinking life's this happy place, and who knows what atrocities are going on in the rest of the world. You know, I said maybe people of other races are being transformed into white people, but maybe they're not. Maybe genocide's happening like behind the curtain here. Like, it's hard to say. It's hard to know. But these are the things that are sort of there in the episode under the surface of. So the fact that it's got all these great ideas that are kind of like built on top of each other, they all fit perfectly together, makes it a very great 25-minute thinking piece of science fiction. The only thing it's maybe missing is maybe the sort of the emotional ramp up and payoff of like a more typical story to give it a sort of an emotional climax kind of thing. But I didn't even really feel like I was missing it all that much, because everything they said and everything they were talking about was so interesting. So yeah, it went in quick as well. It went in super quick. I had a really good time just hearing and learning about this world. So yeah, I almost feel like it's a disservice that I don't have bigger, hotter takes on it, but I think it nails exactly what it's doing, and it's sort of ideas that if you've watched a lot of dystopian and maybe even cyberpunk stories that you'll sort of recognize in here, and it wouldn't surprise me if this inspired a bunch of those different types of stories, for sure. Not that this would have been the first necessarily. I'm sure there were science fiction writers tackling a lot of this stuff. 1984, I imagine, was already a thing that had been written. I'd have to double check, but I think it was. But really, really cool stuff. So, no, I've had a really nice run of episodes that have all been, at the very least, interesting over the last 4 or 5. And this kind of continued that trend. So, let me know what you thought of number 12 Looks Just Like You in the comments, of course. But we did get Rod Serling at the end. And all I really remember from what he said at the end of the episode was something about bikers. So let's find out what's on the next episode. It's called Black Leather Jackets, and here's the description. 3 leather jacket wearing motorcycle riding men invade a peaceful neighborhood. That tells me almost, like, I can't believe how little Rod really said about this, and how little the title adds to it, and then how little that description adds to it. I feel like all I've got still is that there's bikers, and they go into a neighborhood. Like, that's all I've got. So I can't even begin to predict how I'll feel about this one, or what it's about. We'll find out next time. But yeah, you can support everything over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. It helps us out a bunch if you do, and of course, you can just hit the like button. Helps us out a bunch too if you do that. But that is us, so thank you once again for watching or listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV in the Twilight Zone.